Happy Monday and welcome back to the Wolff Den presented by Winnigan Academy. Mark Moyer doing some great things with his networking events. Another one Wednesday afternoon, 4 p.m. Check out winniganacademy.com or any of our social medias. Really excited to have Matt Kelly in the Wolff Den today. We're going to talk all things movies and music, which are two of my favorite things to talk about. So welcome to the Wolff Den. How's everything going?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Matt. It's going well. It's going well. I'm excited to be in the Wolff Den. Looking forward to talking about movies, music, podcasts, all the other geeky stuff that I'm involved in.
Yeah. Well, tell everybody who in the audience who doesn't know who you are. Just give a quick introduction, and then we'll
Sure. So I am Matt Kelly. I am the head of content at Geekscape.net, which is a giant podcasting network. We've got over 18 shows. I also host 3 of those shows, produce 5 of those shows, and run my own business called We Know Podcasting, which is a podcast consultation company / editing for hire / video work / logos and theme songs and a great many other things.
Well, so the first question I'll ask you is the Wolff Den a podcast? What makes a podcast a podcast?
So I think that's a good question. It's a tough question because I feel like there really isn't. If you're talking with other people and human beings are listening to it, I think it kind of falls into a podcast bucket. I think that it's a very broad. It's kind of like referring to something as a podcast at this point is the same as like if you ask somebody their favorite genre of music and they just said rock. Like it's a very coverall term at this point.
Yeah, because we're not. I mean, I don't edit it. I don't put it on Spotify and Apple and have people subscribe. I probably should and will. I don't have the time to do it, and I don't have the money to. And we'll talk about We Know Podcasting. I don't have the funds to have someone do it for me. I'm not even sure I would if I could. But so I'd say when people ask, I do say it's a podcast. I generally just say I have a show called The Wolff Den, and it goes live on LinkedIn and Facebook, and we push it to social media. I guess it doesn't really matter. Everyone and their mother has a podcast, right? Yeah. Someone told me that, and I talking about stats on the internet, but very few podcasts get past like 3 episodes. There's some low number.
Yeah, it's so if you get to 6 episodes, you're already doing better than most of the shows out there. The stat that I like to throw around, because I know sometimes you're like throwing around stats and you don't know how accurate it is. This one I actually know for a fact. So listennotes.com is basically like the Nielsen rating for podcasting, right? And based on their stats, what they do is they pull the RSS feeds of every podcast in the globe and get averages. And then while they can't give you like, hey, you've got X, however million people listening to you, what they are able to do is build a statistic and say, hey, your show is being listened, like the amount of people listening to your show puts you in the top 10% of all the podcasts in the world, or the top 5% of all the podcasts in the world. All you need to get to the top 10% of all the podcasts in the world is to have 100 people listen to your episode within a month. So that is one of those numbers where I feel like that's an achievable number, but it also says how many podcasts there are out there where like 4 people are listening to it. You know what I mean? Like there are a lot of podcasts out there that aren't really getting listens, or they've only been around for, like you said, 6 episodes and then they just drop off. So there is a very time-tested fact that if you keep at it, the numbers will grow and you will get up there. I take a lot of pride in the fact that every podcast that I work on is in the top 10% at a minimum. Most of them are actually in the top 1 to 2% of all the podcasts available globally, which is a really cool thing to know.
Yeah, I mean, we're at 100. This is our 145th episode of the Wolff Den, which is just, it started out, I was going to do it. People said, go LinkedIn Live. You got to do LinkedIn Live. So I was like, I'll do some LinkedIn Live. And we did once a week. And then I was like, twice a week. And then I kept trying to tell, have people who I wanted to come on, inviting them. And I didn't want to be like, hey, you want to come on on my show, we're booking for 8 months from now because I do it once a week, and I got 40 people who want to come on the show. So now we're doing it 4 days a week. Really,
That's awesome.
it's fun. I just love I love talking to people about the things that I'm passionate about, but I also love hearing stories from people and to talk about what they're passionate about and things that are important. Like this episode today, we're going to talk a ton about movies and music and podcasting. In the grand scheme of things, it's not really that important, but people love it's what people love to talk about. And then we have conversations with people who talk about, really traumatic things that happen to your life. And we talk about mental health. So it's, we're not really pigeonholed into anything on the Wolff Den, which is kind of what I like about it. You just never know what you're going to do. And I think it offers the ability for more people to want to kind of listen to it. Say, all right, today's not my show, but
yeah,
more than likely one person this week is going to be someone I'd like to hear more about it.
That's how it was with Mark Maron for a while. Like Mark Maron, it was very much, hey, do I know this guest? Nah. All right. Well, I'm going to still subscribe because there's going to be a guest every 2 or 3 episodes that I am very excited to listen to for 3 hours.
And I think some of the best guests we've had are people that no one's ever known about. And because a lot of times, you go, and I consider this almost like a talk show. You go listen to the talk shows and they have these famous people on. Yeah, they'll tell a story here or there. But for the most part, it's kind of like real surface conversation. It's 3 minutes. Like, that's why we go an hour. We go an hour. Be like, I can't get into anything in 10 minutes.
You deal with a lot of the like pre-written stories that you've heard them tell like on 14 other talk shows already. Like you don't really get to know the person on those types of shows. I agree with you. I think it takes an hour just to sometimes warm someone up enough. That's why I once was I spoke at UCLA's podcasting course. And I was talking to a bunch of those kids, and for the UCLA classes, they have to produce a 15-minute podcast. And this one girl asked, how do I stop my co-hosts from going on these tangents when I'm trying to get them to focus? And my advice was let them go on the tangents, because the tangent might be the better 15 minutes than what you had planned. Like, yeah, I think the harder you try to focus on like, let's promote this thing, you're actually doing a disservice to your show anyway. So yeah, giving yourself that full hour to really just like see where the conversation goes, and you just have a little, a few, hey, let's try to touch these topics. But I mean, if you don't get to the topics and the show's funny and entertaining, then who cares?
Yeah, it's hard because I see that a lot. And then I'm, someone will talk for 3 minutes and I have 3 things in my mind that I want to follow up with. And then we go, elsewhere. We're unscripted here, which I think is the way to go. I don't need to give you questions. I heard somewhere that Larry King never did any research on his guests either, because he wanted to be surprised by the answers he gets, which I think is a good. I kind of do that myself also. Not that we're looking to be Larry King, good or bad, but I think it's a good way to go, to not kind of know where they're going to say and kind of get surprised sort of with the audience, and that can help you flow. The other funny thing I get when I have people on the show is I'll say something, they'll be like, I think your question is, and I'm like, no, there's no question. I'm just making a statement. Do you have anything to say about it? Yes. Okay, great. If you're not, let's move on. Let's move on to the next one. Like, I'm not interviewing you. I'm just trying to have a conversation about whatever it is we're supposed to have a conversation about. So, but you've been doing this a long time. Podcasting has been around a long time. How'd you get into podcasting? And then you're obviously, I found you through music and through movies. Was it like, does one come before the other? Say, hey, I want to talk about this. How do I do it? Or say, hey, I'm doing a podcast. What should we talk about? And they say, oh, I know this stuff.
Yeah. So I actually got started in podcasting in 2005. So I've been doing it we're heading into 16 years, basically, that I've been doing this. I discovered podcasting. I had purchased my first Apple laptop, and I was on iTunes, and I had heard the word podcast, and I saw that was a tab on iTunes. So I was like, oh, let me see what these podcasts are about. Back then, there was maybe like 30 of them. And ironically, I stumbled on the Geekscape. And I was like, all right, this is like a geeky podcast. And it was now one of my practically my unofficial older brother, Jonathan London, was sitting on his couch. It was a video podcast. It was him on his couch with these different guests, and they would talk about music, video games, comic books, films, whatever. And it was basically just like, hey, this is my comic book expert, and the Ghost Rider movie came out, so let's both go see the Ghost Rider movie, and we'll sit down on the couch and we'll like really hash out what we thought about the movie and pull like our background of comic book storylines to kind of figure out like what was this inspired by, blah blah blah. So I got really sucked into that show, and I reached out to Jonathan and was like, I would love to have my own podcast, and he said, then do it. Like just
by the way, the hardest thing about doing a podcast is just do it. It's the hardest thing. The hardest thing.
So the thing was that I was going to school for film. That was my intention. And I actually never got anything done because if you know anything about making film, there's so many steps and there's so many periods where you can second guess yourself and jump off the ship. Podcasting, I didn't allow myself that. That's kind of what changed things for me. Was with podcasting, I would just record it and, like you said, just put it out raw. The next day it would go out raw. And I don't like doing that now. I like to like pre-record and edit and really like meticulously go through it. But I think I needed those first couple of years of just recording and putting it out there and seeing responses and getting feedback and being able to like kind of mold who I was. The worst thing that I see people do, and I was really bad about this as well, is like, you get into, say, radio because you love Howard Stern. So then you're just doing your Howard Stern impersonation. And like, no one wants to hear Matt Wolff's impersonation of Howard Stern. They want to hear Matt Wolff. Yeah. And it's like getting that comfort in yourself to be like, I don't need to be the person that I look up to. I can just be me, for better or for worse, is like the biggest hurdle to get over a lot of the time. So that's kind of my getting my foot in the water. I don't think we want to go through the whole like 16-year, like, and then I did this show and then I did this show. But basically the way I explain it to clients for We Know Podcasting is, I was a podcaster for 16 years, but I've only been good at it for 5. So let me help you skip those 11 shitty years and like, and do like the good stuff. And I'm sorry, I think I cursed there. I didn't mean to.
I think we're allowed to say whatever we want.
Okay, cool. I wasn't sure if LinkedIn had any rules. This is one of my first experiences streaming on LinkedIn. Yeah. But to answer kind of what we were talking about earlier, I have different shows for all of my different things that I like because they all kind of take precedent. Like, I like film a lot because that was what I wanted to do. And I still write scripts and I still like come up with ideas for TV shows. And I do go through the process of like, do we pitch this? Do we try to do something with this? So there's always that love of like film and television in me. Music is like,
while I have it in my mind, when I was in college, the number one job that I thought I was going to do was marketing and promotions for trailers. I thought this is going to be awesome. That's what I want to do. Couldn't get any jobs. It was my fault. I didn't get like internships, which I should have done. I probably could have gotten into it, but that's what I wanted to do. And here we are.
Well, so I'm going to use that as an example, actually. So I love music because I have no musical bone in my body, but I become really analytical of it. So as much as I want it to make things, I actually think my dream job would be like the music supervisor on stuff, like the guy that they show the movie and it's like, go find the songs that are going to like make this the next Garden State soundtrack. You know what I mean? Like, and I would love that. Like, I just have this database of like, famous songs, indie rock artists, local musicians, like all this different stuff, which has since come really in handy. If you've ever listened to the show One Hit Thunder that I created and now co-host, my brain is filled with stuff that like will maybe win some bar trivia, but won't do much else for me, of just like one hit wonders, like minor second and third hits that I think are great songs. So it's
great. It's great conversation. So I mean, it's a good segue to get into the one hit wonder. I think that's how I found you on Facebook with the one hit wonder. There's so many, like everyone has their own definition of what a one hit wonder is. You can go through the list. What do you consider a one hit? Because to me, a one hit wonder is, hey, this song is what only song really people know you for. But people will go and say, look, well, they have like 3 or 4 songs that charted. It doesn't mean they were huge hits. but they charted, right? So what's the
Yeah.
difference from your point of view?
We play fast and loose with those rules on One Hit Thunder. I'll say that right out the gate. I think our 5th episode was on Rick Springfield, which like, yeah, I guess to most people, Jesse's Girl is the only Rick Springfield song. But if you take a look at his charts, he had like 7 songs that were top 10 hits. Like not like, oh, he had a bunch of songs in the bot. Like he had top 10 hits. And I think a lot of the songs are better than Jesse's Girl. Love Is All Right Tonight, I think, is an amazing song. But
he's a great actor too. I mean, he's doing great work in film.
Yeah, and he started as we found this weird thing where like a lot of Australian one-hit wonders started as soap opera stars. Right. So Rick Springfield was a soap opera star. Natalie Imbruglia was a soap opera star, both of them from Australia. Very weird thing that we've caught there. I think that people sometimes blend one-hit wonder with novelty artist, and I think that becomes a factor. We just recorded, obviously, Halloween's around the corner, so we did Monster Mash is going to be our Halloween episode. Definition of a novelty song. Like you look at like, you know, Bruce or Bobby Boris Pickett's back catalog, and like beyond the Monster Mash, he did the Monster Swim and the Monster Holiday. And it was like, he just kept going to that well. Still managed to have 2 other songs chart in the top 100, but nowhere near the fact that Monster Mash was a #1 song at one point. So you have the novelty artists, but then you do have these, I think it's interesting. Each decade, there's a different reason why I think you have one-hit wonders. You have like the 50s, you had these hit maker songwriters that were just writing songs for 100 artists. So the songwriters themselves are not one-hit wonders. They've written 100 charting songs, but they wrote 100 charting songs for 100 bands that each only had one hit. So it's like you have that happening. The 90s, I think what really happened was the death of Kurt Cobain. I think Kurt Cobain commits suicide, and then you've got these record labels scrambling to find the next Kurt Cobain. So then they're signing the Toadies, and they're signing Dishwalla, and they're signing Local H, and they're grabbing any band that they can think of that might possibly be the next Nirvana. And all of those bands are getting 1 song on the radio, maybe 2 songs on the radio, and then they're gone as well. Like they aren't the next Nirvana, so the record label just kind of pulls out their interest. But
back in the day, that was enough. Like when I was in college, I would just buy an album because of 1 song, and
exactly.
And
that's what I think happened.
I'd have a lot of money if I get the money back for all the CDs I bought just to get 1 song.
But I think that is why you do have these artists where like, when we are having people pick artists for One Hit Thunder, when we're talking to these guests and they pick a one-hit wonder, a lot of the time it is these 90s artists, because it's someone who says like, all right, yeah, the Toadies really were almost famous for Possum Kingdom. That was like their big hit. But like I bought that album when Possum Kingdom was on the radio, and I absolutely loved every single track, and more people should know the Toadies. We had that with Jared from Bowling for Soup when he came on to talk about Sister by the Nixons. And he was just like, you know, that might be the only song anybody knows from the Nixons, but like every one of their records is great. Like the album that they put out last year is still as good as like what they put out in 92. And like, you're getting these people who are passionate about these bands that like, on the mainstream level, no one knows.
Jared on our show, and he's a great guest. But also, there's like people like Jared, people like you. I mean, you're very, very, very knowledgeable about music. So the one-hit wonder conversation is a little bit different than even say someone like me who knows a lot about music but doesn't get that deep in the weeds of it. And then someone who's just a casual music listener to say, you know, Ice Ice Baby is, a one-hit wonder, which it's obviously not. He's had like 2 or 3 other hits they've not even been like obscure hits. They're legit hits.
That was a controversial one for us for sure. Vanilla Ice, we had a lot of people messaging us like, "These not a one-hit wonder."
Well, give me a few names. Give me a few names of like that people always are saying they're one-hit wonder that really aren't, that most people should understand aren't, and then give me a couple of names of your favorite one-hit wonders.
Sure. So the big one that I've been using as an example of why we justify someone as a one-hit wonder is actually Cisco, right? Because you think of Cisco, you think of the Thong Song, right? Did you know the follow-up song to the Thong Song actually charted higher than the Thong Song? Some song called Yeah, Incomplete. Never heard the song in my life, but it was a number one hit, and Thong Song only got to number 4. So, like,
Well, let's
explain
talk
that to
about
me.
why the thong song or this one even got that high. It's a fun
Well,
song, right? I mean, that's part
it's
of what these one hit wonders are. They're fun songs
they're
that are
fun, they're
catchy.
memorable. And I think our guest on that episode was Jen Pop from the Bomb Pops, which is a phenomenal female fronted punk band on, I believe they're on Fat Records. And she pointed out something that I had never even paid attention to, which was like, this song is as famous as it is because the production of that song is unbelievable for literally a song about fat asses and thongs. Like, you have like a full string quartet. It like builds to this great crescendo in the middle of the song. Like, it's so catchy and over the top. And I think that that's why it works, because I think if it was like a slow R&B jam about thongs, we would have forgotten about it. But the fact that there was so much production in it really made that song pop.
You know what song I have on my phone that I play when I work out? It's Raining Tacos.
I mean, that's sometimes you get drawn. Yeah, you get pulled into those catchy songs. For me, like I've said it a million times on the podcast, and I'll probably say it a million times more. Semisonic is arguably, like, to me, they are the definition of one hit wonder that you should go back and really dive into their back catalog. They had 2 other singles that like did modest success on the alternative charts, called Secret Smile and Singing Me to Sleep. And I legitimately think Singing Me to Sleep is one of the best songs from the 90s. And people either don't remember it, or when you play it for them, they'll hear the guitar riff and be like, oh, wow, I forgot about this song. But it's a really catchy song, and they only put out 3 albums, but they put out 3 perfect albums in their career. And the lead singer went on to write songs for Adele. He wrote Hello. He wrote, he's got Grammys for days. And the other big example for me, and this one is definitively a one-hit wonder, I don't think anyone would argue otherwise, but the New Radicals. That song, You Get What You Give, I think is the best song. I would put that in the top 5 best songs that ever come out in the 90s, is You Get What You Give. I think that there's so many moving pieces in that song. And then that lead singer as well went on to produce a ton of massive hit records after that band broke up.
My favorite one-hit wonders, Tub Thumping.
Great.
Flagpole Sitta.
That's our second most downloaded episode is Flagpole Sitta. People love that song.
And Banditos.
I love Banditos so much. I love the Refreshments. Like that, they're just
to go back and listen to their stuff, like you said, but and they all have good stuff, but it's like there's not that song that kind of hits you.
Well, the joke that we kept making with the Refreshments was that it's tough to call them a one-hit wonder because they also did the King of the Hill theme song, which everybody knows. Okay. So, like, does that count? I don't know. But I'd argue actually more people know the King of the Hill theme than Banditos to a certain extent. But yeah, I mean, let me see, the lighting's not good enough. Literally where I'm at I have like a little studio that I have, like, you know, obviously there's a guest bed here for anybody who crashes up here, but this whole side of the room is for live streaming purposes. It's like a big area, and I have a tower of CDs, like arguably about 4,000 CDs inside of this shelving tower, that I just was like, I want the background of this live streaming to represent me as a whole. And that had to be there. That had to be a part of it, was the stacks and stacks of CDs.
So I'm about to go on the rock boat. I went to Gainesville. Is Sister Hazel a one-hit wonder with All For You?
They technically are, yeah. I don't know if we've covered Sister Hazel yet, but they had a song on the 10 Things I Hate About You soundtrack called Your Winner that I absolutely adore. I think that song's gorgeous.
It's hard for me to, because I've been such a big fan. I've probably seen them more than anyone else. There's a lot of reasons I go on their cruise. Yeah. But they have so many great songs. But I guess if you're going by charts, they would be.
They fall into that jam band category where it's kind of tough. Like, even artists who maybe were like 2 or 3 hit wonders, I feel like Dave Matthews Band is the only like mainstream jam band that I can think of that has been able to keep generating hits for years. Like Blues Traveler, you had 2 or 3 big songs for them, and then like they're kind of this underground band for people beyond that. people have asked if they could talk about Two Princes by the Spin Doctors a million times, and we always are like, no, Little Miss Can't Be Wrong was a huge song. We will not be talking about the Spin Doctors.
Yeah.
But another example of a jam band, I think that those are those bands that really popped in like the mid 90s. You had this kind of like pseudo hippie jam band mixed with like pop sensibilities going on. And I don't know why. He's not my favorite of the batch, but Dave Matthews seemed to just hold on to the public mainstream eye while all the other ones just kind of fell into their little like community pockets where you have these super dedicated fans that will see them anywhere.
So I go to Dave Matthews every year, and it's probably my favorite concert of the year, only because of the tailgate. The tailgate's by far the best tailgate that I've been to, non-sports related. And my friend and I always joke, like, one year we're just not going to go into the show. We're just going to tailgate because we're not that type of Dave Matthews. I want to hear his hits, and he doesn't play them. Very rarely, three of them.
My Dave Matthews joke has been that I've liked every single song I've ever heard by them, just so long as they're not consecutively after each other. Yeah. Like there's like a certain point where I think my threshold is about 3 songs in a row by him, where I'm just like, all right, I need to change it up a little bit. I like all of these songs, but I can't listen to like an album from start to finish by him.
There's a great John Mulaney bit when he talks about he's at lunch and he's on the jukebox and he keeps playing What's Good.
Yes. Yeah, the Salt and Pepper Diner. Yeah, that is one of my favorite John Mulaney bits. But yeah, that's basically me with Dave Matthews. There's a certain point where you hit a wall.
I love but I look forward to Dave Matthews. I'm just like, can you play the hits? Because he plays Friday and Saturday. And like every year we go Saturday. And every year Friday has better hits, but I gotta imagine Saturday is going to be better tailgating. So we stick with Saturday. Let's talk about the greatest songs ever, because you see all these lists out there, and then I also talk about the worst songs ever. And I look at these lists, and there's songs like "We Built This City," and
I love that song. I don't know why people love it.
These are some. I love these songs. How are these on the worst songs ever?
I think that I try to avoid one of the big things that I try to avoid with every show that I produce. And Geekscape, we actually have our slogan now. It took us a couple of years to come to this slogan, but it's "Don't Hate, Create." We just kind of got sick of existing in an internet space where everybody's a critic, and by everybody's a critic, it means that like everything sucks. And we wanted to create something that was like, no, let's celebrate this. Like starting in August, we started running a YouTube channel where we've been doing every Tuesday and Friday. We'll have different pop culture related videos. And I take a lot of pride in those videos that we've done. Not that they're like crushing it in the numbers game, but the fact that we've produced 3 months worth of video content and every single video is a positive thing about some piece of entertainment. And we just, I'm sure we could do, the 10 worst horror film sequels of all time, and all of a sudden we'd have 10,000 downloads. But I'd rather play the positivity game and let it slowly trickle in instead. But yeah, every time that I see those worst songs of all time, like, I don't know what the worst song of all time is. Honestly, the worst song of all time is probably a song none of us have heard.
That's why they don't keep playing it. I'm not a fan of Blind Melon, and that always pops up on some of the great songs. I'm just not a fan. Maybe it's the video. I don't know what it is. I don't like that song. I turn it off when it comes on.
I enjoy No Rain, but like I actually think the follow-up single that didn't chart, Changes, was a much better song. But yeah, like No Rain is an interesting one. I remember when we did our episode on No Rain, our guest, I believe it was Trevor from Punchline, was on that episode. And he had pointed out that like that particular episode, when he was researching the song to do it, he was like, I never noticed that the drums don't even come in until 2 minutes into the song. Like the song is literally just a guitar and vocal for literally 2/3 of the song. And then the full band comes in at the very end. And I was like, that's kind of wild for like a mainstream radio hit, especially thinking of the time period that was like, you're listening to alternative radio and you're getting Stone Temple Pilots, Pearl Jam, Nirvana, like all these heavy hitters, to kind of have this massive song that is, for all things considered, an acoustic song for half of the runtime. is it's kind of impressive that it did as well as it did.
I think if people like it, I'm just saying music is so subjective anyway.
It very much so.
It's, I think a lot of the music that's out today is garbage, which I'm sure a lot of people, who listen to stuff in the 90s will tell you, that it's no good. And then there's some really good, catchy pop music that I love to listen. I was at the Jonas Brothers last night.
Yeah, Jonas Brothers have been killing it lately. Dude, their album, the album was Sucker and Cool. I was like, this is an amazing release.
I like what a man's got to do in year 3000. I love those.
Yeah.
Every time I exercise, it's on my playlist. It's playing.
I think that it's interesting that you're getting. I mean, I don't love all of them, but right. like Olivia Rodrigo, Machine Gun Kelly, like you've got all these guys who are basically playing the pop punk music that I grew up on almost 20 years ago now, and I'm like, all right, I'm cool if this is the new sound coming back. Like I'll ride that wave a little bit, but it is very interesting how everything it just kind of goes in those waves. I was talking to someone, the episode that we're going to put out on Wednesday for One Hit Thunder is on the Avalanches, Frontier Psychiatrist. If you remember that song from like 1999, it's all DJ scratching. So but I was talking about how like I don't hate modern day hip hop. I'm not a fan of it, but I definitely don't like despise it. But I do think that there's something missing in like I loved watching like the Beastie Boys and having, Mixmaster Mike up there just scratching records and like creating the beats in real time versus like plugging in an iPod. Yeah, like there was something about having that DJ up there that is really missing. And it is an art form. It is. I can pick up a guitar and get a couple chords out of it. You know what I mean? Like I can sit behind a drum set and I can bang out a beat. You could give me months with a record player and say, turn these records into a whole different sound, and I'd never be able to crack that code.
I'm a big fan of NF now. NF and Dua Lipa are probably my two up and coming that I listen to a lot out there. AJR also. Who are you listening to these days?
Big on Olivia Rodrigo. I had when the pandemic had started, approximately, my sister and I got really sucked in on High School Musical, the series on Disney Plus. And I remember thinking, man, this girl has some pipes. Like she can really sing. And then out of nowhere, like, that Driver's License song dropped. And I was like, what is this? Like someone figured out how to do a poppy version of a Tori Amos song. And I think that record, that might be my favorite album of this year is Sour by Olivia Rodrigo. It just goes through so many different genres. You've got like, Good For You. It kind of feels like a Paramore, Alanis Morissette song. Brutal is like a really heavy song. But then you've got like, I remember I was in Pittsburgh recording some episodes of One Hit Thunder, and Chris and I were driving to get lunch, and Deja Vu came on. And he was like, how is it like, he's like, I love this song, but this is such a weird radio song because it's like a weird, whispery pop song that like in the middle of the song turns into like a Portishead song for no reason. Like it just turns into trip hop and then goes back to being like a calm whisper. Like it's she's doing like the producers that she's working with are doing some really strange things with those songs. And I'm kind of into it.
We had Jesse Kirschbaum on. I don't know if you know who he is. He just said, "Why do we have to like pigeonhole songs and artists? So just let them do what they do. Maybe it's it's pop punk. Maybe it's hip hop, pop. I love the songs that kind of just are what they are, and we don't have to figure it out.
I agree. I think like when I look at my Spotify playlist, and I'm sure you could say the same thing about like your workout mix. Like I don't really. I'd much rather have a whole combination of weird different things than just listen to the same sound for an hour and a half. And that's been back in the day. I used to throw charity shows. I would raise money for different children's charities by booking local bands. And there was always this difference between it was me and this other promoter. And the one promoter's company was called 610 Hardcore because that was our area code. And it was just like 8 bands, all hardcore bands in like a bar basement. And they were fun shows to go to. I'm not going to take anything away from it. He did a great, like, he made some bank throwing those shows. My shows were same deal, like 8 bands for $8 type thing, but it'd be like a rapper, a hardcore band, an acoustic act, like a dude playing accordion, singing weird songs, like a ska band. Like, it was like, let me throw 8 sounds that shouldn't go together, but because none of them sound alike, it all kind of makes sense.
Yeah, like last night we had the Jonas Brothers was the main act. Kelsey Ballerini was the opener, which is country, and I'm
Yeah.
listening to it. I'm like, why are these two playing together? And then Jordan McGraw, who is, I just learned this morning, is Dr. Phil's son, has a pop punk band. He's got a song called McConaughey, which is a great pop punk song coming out on the 22nd. Check it out, Jordan McGraw, McConaughey. It's a really fun song. And then I'm like, that's pretty good to get I get a little bit of everything, and not hearing sort of the same song. So I understand, having the different sounds, and people can like all of it.
Yeah, and I think that, like, even what you just said, like, having a country artist for the Jonas Brothers kind of, but doesn't make sense. Having a pop punk artist open for the Jonas Brothers also kind of, but doesn't make sense. But having a country artist and a pop punk artist, it's like, yeah, I guess that does kind of make sense, because I would say that the Jonas Brothers do have elements of both of that mixed into the pop music that they make. Like, it's this weird thing where it's like, you're just make music, make the, like, on Horror Movie Night, we were recording an episode and we got into a conversation about Danny Elfman, and someone like Danny Elfman, we were talking about, like, Oingo Boingo is like a great band, like Oingo Boingo is this undeniably amazing band from the 80s, but like, once you took away just having 3 or 4 instruments to write music on, and you hand Danny Elfman a full orchestra where he can, like, let every crazy idea living in his brain explode out, you got some of the most complicated, interesting movie soundtracks you've ever heard. Like,
It's movies and music. The music in movies is really can make or break a movie. There's so many good movies that have good songs just for it, and then just good songs throughout it. So I want to talk about movies a little bit, but we had an interesting conversation always, like, if you could give up something, movies or music or sports, what would you give up? And ultimately I say I can't give up music, because without music, almost everything else is crap.
Yeah, I remember with Geekscape, we used to talk about this a lot of the time, because we would talk about how, like, as a geek, you want to be involved in everything, but you've only got so much bandwidth, right? So it's like, if you're looking at watching every new movie that comes out, playing every new video game that comes out, watching every TV show that comes out, reading every comic book that comes out, or listening to every album that comes out, you can't do all 5 of those. You know what I mean? Like, something's going to have to outweigh the other. So, like, I know next to nothing about video games. The newest system I own is a Super Nintendo that I've had as a kid. Like, that was not the path I went down. But when it comes to movies and music, that's always been the path that I've taken. And then comic books for a little bit, but now I've really shifted into television. I've become a bigger, like, binge watcher over the last couple of years, and the comic books have kind of just stopped. I had to cancel my subscriptions because I just had a pile of unread books beside my bed every night. So it is weird that you only have so much bandwidth. And even the irony is that I quit my job 2 months ago to do We Know Podcasting full time, and part of me was like, I can, like, get caught up on some of the stuff that I haven't. Nope. I have less free time than I've ever had in my entire life.
I used to watch a ton of television. I watched every show. And now, my wife watches a lot of binge watches shows, and she can put it on when she's doing something else. I need to watch the show and concentrate if I'm watching the show.
Yeah.
Same movie. So we watch a lot of movies together, and I'm more of a movie guy than a show. Even though I'd love to watch all these shows, we did start the Squid Game. We're on, like, episode 3. I'm like, this is interesting. This is crazy. This is dumb. So we'll see. We'll see where it takes us. But movies, I love to watch movies. I used to go to the Friday. I'd go and just in the middle of the day watch a new new release, and don't tell anyone.
Theater
Sneak into a second.
Friday Friday afternoon by yourself in a movie theater is one of the greatest pleasures in the world. No one understands how great it is to go to a movie by yourself.
Yeah,
Like,
awesome. I love it. But let's talk. You mentioned horror. I know that's a big thing for you, so I just want to hit on a couple things real quick. There's a new Scream movie coming out. Good, bad? What do you think about it?
I was nervous. I was nervous. It's the first Scream movie without Wes Craven. Um, it's coming out in January, which is never a good sign for any movie. That's usually the studio dumping zone. But I'll tell you, that trailer got me excited. And the guys who are doing it did Ready or Not, which I thought was one of the better horror films of the last decade. Just a real good sense of fun, super gory. So I'm cautiously optimistic. Scream is one of my favorite. Like the first Scream movie is what made me a horror movie fan.
Yeah.
So those films are near and dear to my heart. I mean, they could do Scream 15 and all of them have sucked, and I would still go see it opening night because it's just a very important film to me. But I'm excited.
I just saw Jamie Kennedy's stand up a couple of weeks ago. He was hilarious, by the way. Really, really funny and stand up. How about Spiral with Chris Rock?
I never got into the Saw movies. I watched the first one maybe a year after it had come out, and I never was into the torture porn stuff. It just couldn't, it didn't connect with me. I think that Saw is a perfectly fine example of like a low budget movie, but each sequel was just like diminishing returns for me. So I stepped out around Saw 4 and never really looked back. So
yeah, so I like Saw. I'm not as crazy about the actual torture porn, that aspect of it, but if they can kind of connect everything and bring it full circle, I thought they did a good job with the Spiral movie with Chris Rock. And I don't think he's a good actor at all, but I thought he was pretty good in this. He's funny. I don't think he's a very good actor. One of the worst movies, and I don't even come to mind, but the movie with Sandler and Rock and all of them at the camp or something. What was that movie?
Oh, Grown Ups.
Grown Ups. I think that could be possibly the worst movie ever made, just because the acting is so bad.
I don't know.
They're all hilarious, but
Sandler's the last 20 years of Sandler's career has a lot of competition for worst movie of all time. I don't think he's made a good Netflix one yet, but
I laughed at Hubie Halloween, and I thought the one with him and Jennifer Aniston. The problem is, I don't think he's a good actor.
No.
So if you can't get past that, then you can't be entertained by his movies.
I think the problem that I have with Sandler actually is that I think when he wants to be, he's a very good actor. You know what I mean? Like I thought Uncut Gems is like, man, this guy has range. And like I remember loving Punch Drunk Love, and I genuinely think that The Wedding Singer is like the perfect rom-com. Like that movie is flawless. But I think that they're just got this point, and I try not to talk too much trash on Adam Sandler, even though I haven't really liked a lot of his stuff, because everything that I've heard from any human being that has interacted with him is that he is, bar none, the nicest celebrity that you will ever have the honor of meeting. So it's like, same way I feel about Kevin Smith. Like Kevin Smith meant the world to me, and I feel like he hasn't really made a good movie in 20 years, but everything that I've heard about people who've interacted with him has been nothing but positive.
Man,
so like, I don't want to be up there.
I love both of them, but look, you can love someone and love their work, and they're not above just being like, look, they really kind of mailed it in on this one.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
no, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, you can tell the Adam Sandler movies where, especially Grown Ups, I feel is a great example where it's like, you'll send me to Jamaica? All right, let's do it.
Let me bring my friends too. That was always let me bring my friends.
I think my kids can act too. Can we throw them in there too? Let's give a role to my wife real quick so she can come with us.
Now, I liked Uncut Gems, but I did not like his performance as much, and maybe that's because I'm Jewish and I found him annoying. I don't know what it is.
It could. That's a movie that I'll never watch again. The anxiety that ran through me the entire time I was watching it is not something I want to recreate. But I thought that movie was. I genuinely think that movie got very much robbed at the Oscars to not get really nominated for anything. Because that thing was a masterpiece. That was insane how good that movie was.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. I would have liked to see a different ending, kind of like I Care. What's that movie? There's the movie I Care with the caretaker. What the hell?
Oh, I don't think I know
You
this
didn't see that
one.
one on Netflix? It was talked. What the heck is the name of that movie?
No, but yeah, I mean, I both love and hate it the ending of that
Yeah, I
movie.
agree. I think I
like
agree.
like I didn't like it, but I also was like, I can't think of a more fitting ending to the movie at the same time. Like sometimes you watch a movie and you're like, oh, that's like when I think about Dexter, I could tell you how to end Dexter properly, but like I can't tell you how to do a better ending than Uncut Gems. I just know it didn't sit right with me.
The movie's called I Care a Lot on Netflix.
Oh,
Really, really good movie. You should watch it.
I'll have to check that out. I'll throw
I
that
watch
on
a
the
lot of
list.
Netflix movies, so I saw like there was a trilogy of of horror films like The Street, something 13th Street or
Oh, Fear Street. It was I could not get into them, and I wanted to. It felt so perfect for me, but it was just too. I've gotten really adverse to like the Riverdale vibe of
yeah.
TV and movies, and it just felt like Riverdale to me. And like I watched all of Riverdale, and I'll probably watch the next season when it comes out on Netflix. But I don't like it. I don't like that. I feel like I need to watch it.
I stopped River. I thought this thing is awesome. It's great, and then I kind of stopped it halfway through. I don't know if I'll go back. Another movie. There's someone inside my house. Very Scream like. Have you seen that on Netflix?
I was trying to do an interview with the directors at a film festival and it just didn't sync up. I did a virtual film festival last month. So unfortunately I haven't gotten around to it yet, but I probably will before the end of October. Really the big priority was that it took me a couple days. I finally watched Halloween Kills.
Okay.
It was all right.
Yeah.
It's like,
I'm a Freddy guy. Freddy.
same.
Yeah.
So,
Nightmare on Elm
like,
Street for me, it was the best. To me, that's the
yeah.
favorite horror series.
No, I agree with you because the thing with Freddy that gives him a lot of extra points is like even a bad Freddy movie, because they all act in dream logic, still have these like amazing moments that stick in your like. I don't think that Dream Child is a particularly good movie, but there are still kills in that movie that live rent free in my brain because it's just so unlike anything you'll ever see. Like I did for better or for worse, for charity, I did a 15-hour live stream where I watched all of the Friday the 13th movies in a row on August 13th. And man, a lot of repetition after a while. Like there's only so many ways that you can see Jason stab somebody. Like,
That's weird. Like to me, that I'm not afraid of Jason unless I guess I'm not seeing him. There's just so many other people I'm more afraid
yeah.
of. Like, all right,
So I will say a friend of mine out in this way, and obviously they haven't really been able to do this since March of 2020, but my friend Joey runs a program called Dark Hill Events. And what they do is they do these giant interactive, like you are in a horror movie
awesome
type thing. So they'll rent a summer camp and you sign up and they bring you out to the summer camp and like they give you 1980s camp counselor outfits to wear. And it's just first thing in the morning. It's like, all right, gang, the kids are going to be here at the end of the weekend. We got to get this camp ready. And you spend all day cutting down trees and like pulling in the canoes and cleaning up the campsite. And they cook you dinner and you sit around a fire and they tell the story of Jason Voorhees. And then they just have a big hulking actor come bursting out of the woods dressed as Jason. And you run around and it's a game of survival. Who's the last person to like make it to the end of the night? And the people I know who've been involved in it have said it is the most like I've heard them say like I was never scared of the Friday the 13th movies, but it's very different when there is a very convincing Jason Voorhees chasing you in the woods.
What was the one? Was it the first one with when the shoes were tied and they couldn't get out of the car? Is that the first Friday the 13th, or am I mixing up movies?
You might be. I'm trying
it's
to remember.
At the end of it, and the ladies get stuck. That someone's stuck in the car because they can't get their shoes untied. And then
I don't remember that.
My nightmares, I get that.
It could be one. Yeah, it might be a forgotten Freddy nightmare.
How many they had? 15 or 16 of them? What?
So Friday the 13th, they're at 12. and there's a whole. They've been trying to make the 13th movie, but there's been. I'm not sure if you followed any of the crazy legal thing,
No.
but so Sean Cunningham, who produced and directed the first movie, hired somebody to write the script. Then after Jason Takes Manhattan, they sold the property from, I want to say it went from like Paramount to New Line Cinemas. So New Line Cinemas owned the character and the name Jason, but they didn't own the name Friday the 13th. So Paramount owned Friday the 13th, and New Line owned Jason, which is why you got like Jason Goes to Hell, Jason X, like Friday the 13th was nowhere in the titles of those movies.
And you kind of don't.
Now,
I mean, you kind of don't need it, but it's kind of just stupid to not be able to have it.
It's stupid to not have it, but now the guy who wrote the first movie is trying to claim that he created Jason Voorhees, so he should own Jason Voorhees, the character, and he should get a cut of that pay. And that's turning the whole thing where now he's won. I don't know what he can do with this, but he won rights to the boy version of Jason Voorhees.
Oh,
So the boy who drowns in a lake, Jason Voorhees, he owns the rights to.
Like the other people, I mean, yeah, you can't put them in the new movies, right?
It's like,
I don't know.
It's just so like no one knows who owns what rights on how to, like, I don't think we'll ever see another Friday the 13th movie. I think that
fans lose out on that. I did an article on the Field of Dreams game, which I was lucky to go to, and it's no different than the Field of Dreams in baseball. It's like they don't own the rights to the movie stuff, and so it's like unless you put everything together, there's got to be a way to have everyone say, all right, let's agree on this so the fans can be rewarded and the ones who aren't missing out on this.
And it's these older properties. That's the problem, is that like owning the copyright to a character didn't matter that much in the 80s the way that it matters now in like 2021.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So like you have these newer franchises coming out where like from the first movie, they are already working out what the franchise rights are going to play out as, and that kind of just becomes the law. But it's similar to like, I always think Scrubs is my favorite TV show of all time, so I use that as an example. But like, if you try to watch Scrubs on Hulu, the first 4 seasons, all of the music has been pulled out and replaced with sound-alike music because it didn't start streaming until season 5. And so the contracts never had a streaming clause when they signed these songs to be in the movie. Like, it's like all these weird stuff.
Isn't it more work to get it out than it would be to just keep it in and say, hey, well,
yeah.
I mean.
And that's the thing. People charge astronomically. I love the show Daria. It was one of my favorite shows on MTV as a kid. And that DVD took forever to come out because they could not, at the time, MTV basically like indirectly owned the rights to whatever songs they wanted. So MTV would just be like, yeah, let's throw like a Beastie Boys song, a Nirvana song, and a Beatles song into this episode of Daria. Well, then when it comes time to put that on DVD, those are some pretty hefty copyright syndication fees you have to pay. So it took forever for Daria to come out because someone literally had to go through every episode, rip out the original soundtrack, and then write sound-alike music for every episode.
We hit on licensing all the time. I just got, no joke, I got an email from someone. We're trying to do a piece of a ticket, whatever you want to call it. And we asked them, hey, we want to use it. We're going to give it away. We're printing 200 pieces of a thing with this person's image and likeness, and we're just giving it away. And they come back to me, it's like, yeah, we'd be happy to do it, but you got to pay a licensing fee. The cost would be $7,500. I'm like, you're going to charge me $37.50 per card I give away to just put something. I wouldn't even be charging $37. I can't pay you that. I wouldn't pay you $2 a card to do it because it's not worth it. We're giving it away.
Licensing is so weird. I have a friend who really made a name for himself doing like mashup shirts for like TeePublic and like a lot of those sites. And he's had so many of his designs kind of indirectly stolen by the original creators. Because he's like, at the end of the day, what I'm doing is illegal, right? Like I'm taking,
it's a gray area. There's fair use, there's satire. It's a gray area.
Yeah, he's like, I might be sitting there taking Mario from the video game franchise and putting him into like this weird scenario. But if Nintendo decides to literally take my design and reprint it, and I try to complain to them that they stole my design, they can just be like, did we give you permission to use Mario in the first place? Like, so it's like, it is a weird.
This is what what we do on the Wolff thing, because I love fan art, and I want to give some props to. I had this done. I met this guy at the Sopranos con that I did, and this is a fan art that I had done. Two of my favorite shows, Seinfeld and Family Guy. His name is Matthew, and it's called Two Thangs, TWOTHANGS, and that's exactly what he does. He takes two things and he combines them together, and he does a big art piece for you. It's very affordable because he does prints of it and sells them in bulk. I love fan art, so I think what your friend did, I think, it's a gray area, and if you don't get too big, no one cares, right? If you start to get huge, then everybody wants a piece of it.
Well, and that's where we got in trouble. Well, not in trouble, but we got cease and desists for a bunch of our shirts recently with Horror Movie Night. Because we made shirts that just said "wear a mask," and it would be like a picture of Jason Voorhees and Hannibal Lecter and Michael Myers and pretty much any slasher we could think of that wore a mask. And we got a cease and desist from every single studio that owned those characters. So as I was doing conventions this past year, I was like, please, these are the last ones we're ever going to have. Please take them because I can't sell them anywhere. Right. So it is weird. That was the first time we've ever experienced that. We've had plenty of other shirts that I thought for sure were going to get us in trouble. Our Nick Cage shirt that sells really well. We took Nick Cage from The Wicker Man, where he's got the basket over his head with the bees, and it's just that. But then in the same font as what Billy Corgan's wearing on his shirt when it says 0, it says, "Despite all my rage, I'm still just Nick in a cage." And like that shirt has been selling like crazy, but we literally just took the image from the movie. Like we didn't do a cartoon version, or it is undeniably a still from Wicker Man on that shirt. And we've probably sold almost 1,000 copies of that shirt by now. And I keep waiting for that one to get us a cease and desist. But until it does, I'm just going to keep selling it.
I think you don't want to steal people's stuff, but you kind of, if you do make it your own and you're kind of like, you come up with something catchy like that, I don't know. I think there's enough. Well, why do these big people have to worry about the small person? Like, how much is that going to help them if they get a few bucks out of you? And not that you can say, okay, maybe don't do it anymore, but let's not make it a bigger deal than maybe it is.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think it's Nick Cage that's going to contact me. No, you know what I mean? It's going to be whatever studio produced that particular version of Wicker Man, or, Chris from One Hit Thunder does the enamel pins thing. I love enamel pins, where he'll just make enamel pins of different celebrities' faces, and every once in a while, he'll get hit with a cease and desist. Usually they're not too shocking. I know one of them was Lin-Manuel Miranda, and he was like, I thought he'd be cooler. I thought he would have been fine with this, but whatever.
Do you have his contact information? We'd love to have him on the Wolff Den. Or it wasn't Lynn reaching out. It was his representation.
Yeah, well, and he said it was actually technically like the producers of Hamilton that reached out, because it was like in the like he had like the Hamilton logo on the cardboard that the pin was being sold on or something. But yeah,
you've made it.
Yeah. Hey, exactly. Exactly.
Well, give us a couple of
good press.
Yeah, give us a couple of podcasts that people should be tuning into that maybe they don't know about. I mean, everyone knows about the big ones that we don't need to give Seth Rogen any more publicity.
No. We so obviously I'll talk about the ones that I work on real fast. Horror Movie Night comedy podcast hosted by myself and my friend Scott, making fun of horror films that we love from the 80s and 90s. One Hit Thunder with Chris Fafios from Punchline. We have different musical guests on to talk about their favorite one-hit wonder. Christmas 365, which is an all-year-round Christmas podcast that I produce with my buddy Dylan. I do this show called The Roaring Twenties, which is two of my coworkers who are in their late 20s, and it's them just talking about the most embarrassing things that have happened to them during their 20s. And I'm working on a new show that'll be dropping next week called Before My Time. It's a podcast hosted by this girl, Gelsey Laurie, who went viral maybe a year ago. Her and her dad recreated the Beetlejuice dinner scene, just the two of them. Wow. And she's a stunt woman, model, actress, used to do Cirque du Soleil, was on Broadway. She's had a very interesting career for someone who just turned 30 a couple months ago. But she loves old vintage stuff from the 30s, 40s, and 50s. So it's different guests coming on to share the things that they absolutely love from decades before they were born. So we did episodes on like the Carol Burnett show. We've recorded an episode on Some Like It Hot, the Muppet Show, stuff like that. Excluding all of that stuff, all the stuff that I produce, one of the big shows that I keep telling everyone to check out, it is on the Geekscape Network, but I really have nothing to do with this. I just think it's a brilliant show, is a podcast called 91 Donkey Lane, which is these two improv comedians from Boston, Robert Bacon and Nate Lopez. And they basically created this improv comedy podcast where they live in a magical apartment complex. And they bring in different people from the Boston improv scene to play different mythical creatures that live inside their apartment complex and interview them. I was lucky to be a guest on one of the episodes, so I can tell you that it is very much unscripted. They basically just had me on and said, "You run a video store. All right, record." And like that was all they gave me. And we just recorded it for a half hour where I was running a video store, and it was up to me to figure out what was in the video store. Do I like these guys or not like these guys? and built this whole, so like eventually that guy became this grumpy dude who owns a video store that only sells his personal VHS collection, including his own home movies. So like it was just a very weird, we had fun with that, but that show every week when an episode drops, I'm laughing my ass off. I think it's so good.
91 Donkey Lane.
91 Donkey Lane. That is my like, why is this show not more popular pitch for everybody? And then obviously, if you want to have a podcast of your own, you should, and go to weknowpodcasting.com. We're happy to help you form your own podcast, get you a sweet logo, a really cool theme song, do all your editing, help with live streaming, all of that fun jazz.
Yeah, weknowpodcasting.com. Definitely check that out if you're looking to get into the pod, or if you have a podcast already and if you want to make it better or more popular, or find out what Matt and team can do for you.
Yeah,
we're going to let that here with the same question we let everyone go. You can spend a day with one person. It could be anyone in the world. They have to be alive, and you can't be related to them. Who are you choosing, and what would you guys do? We've done outreach. We're making a list. We've had some great answers. We've had some terrible answers. We've had some attainable. I think anyone's achievable if you have enough money. That's or influence. Yeah. That's the first thing.
Let me think about that for a second, because I obviously have my dead answer. I've had a couple where it's like, ooh, I'd like to meet them, but sadly they're dead. Who's someone? I'm trying to think now. My brain just went blank because
I feel like we've mentioned a few names that might be on your list.
No, like Kevin Smith would be cool. Like there's some, but there was someone recently that I was just telling somebody, like, oh man, when they go, I'm gonna be devastated. And now I'm like blanking on who that was. I mean, I guess technically, I don't know. I feel like I bumped into Kevin Smith. I've got like you're killing me. No, I know who it is. John Waters. I want to meet John Waters so bad. It feels so attainable to me. Like I have friends who have just walked into bars where he was just sitting at the bar drinking. So I feel like he only lives an hour and a half away from me. I should just go to Baltimore and bar hop for every weekend until I meet him. But John Waters, I would love to just pick his brain, because I think he is one of the strangest, funniest people that has ever existed.
I reached out. He does some Halloween music festival events, I think.
Yeah.
And I reached out to whoever's in charge. Very hard to get information on, but we're going to put him on the list, and hopefully we can. We got to work quickly on it. Is it okay to say that we got to work quickly on this?
Yeah. John Waters, he's getting up there in age.
All right. Well, we'll put John Waters on the list. Really great to chat. I love talking about movies and music. And anytime, if you need a guest for any of your shows to talk about any stuff, let me know. Happy to come on. Check out weknowpodcasting.com. Follow Matt on LinkedIn or Facebook. One Hit Wonders. A lot of good shows, a lot of good content. If you want to hear, get a little bit more in depth about the movies and the music that you love. Matt's a great source for that. So check him out. appreciate your time here. Looking forward to hearing this new podcast and seeing what comes next. And we'll talk to everyone soon. Have a great night.